fun conversation for sure. The amount of hemp knowledge in this triad right here is crazy.
Mm.
So let me first so for the people watching not on the live video, I've been making it a habit to not make the awkward like silence in the beginning where we're trying to like all scramble to share stuff and get it done. So I just like to get the intro out of the way so that way I could start sharing stuff in the background while you talk about your wonderful business. So welcome to season 3, episode 20. Holy shit, of AA for Entrepreneurs. I am Adam.
And I'm Andrew.
And
And I'm Mike. Oh, sorry.
no, it's cool,
No.
man. So we have a very special guest with us. Mike is very much one of my favorite people in the hemp industry. No offense to everybody else. I love all of you, but Mike has really, really helped our business in ways that I don't know if we could ever really thank him for. You know, like the reason we were even able to launch a product line when we were able to do it was because of Goodenough, and he's spread a lot of good knowledge to us. So for the people that may not know who you are, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, Mike?
Thanks, man. And honestly, it's been a pleasure, and you've been a great growth for us too. So we appreciate it. Obviously, it's like kind of that bonding and learning from each other kind of perspective. But
Yep.
yeah, you've shown us the way in a lot of different areas too. So anyway, I'm Mike Goodenough. I'm one of the founders of Sweet Heal and DG AGtek. We are the first extractor in Connecticut, the first license here. We're licensed by Department of Consumer Protection. We're the second hemp growers license in the state of Connecticut. And we're heavily involved with developing products that get out to the consumer. So CBD products and other product lines of hemp sustainability products. You know, the specialty of our story obviously is we grow it, we extract it, and we make the end user consumable. And so it's been an amazing adventure within the industry in the past 2 years. And so, yeah, we're loving being neighbors to you guys right down the road.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of one of those weird things where we're neighboring states, but we have such different like hemp laws with everything.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. They just need to come up with some federal hemp regulations and then call it a day, right?
Yeah, kind of like make it all equal, so we're all on the same page. Everybody knows what everything's going on.
Yep.
So were you always a farmer?
So yeah, so my family background is we have a 208-year-old family farm up in Pomfret, Connecticut, which is only about 20 minutes away from our greenhouses or our greenhouse complex. And in fact, in Pomfret, we have greenhouses there. We have the first USDA granted greenhouse growing hemp. So it was built off of a USDA grant. And we put hemp into it immediately the moment it was legal. And we have a couple of other greenhouses that we explore hydroponics, and you know, we do the living soil now, but we explore all kinds of different soil complex or combinations and so forth. And it's a lot of where our R&D is happening for the textiles industry. So yeah.
That's awesome. I saw that you guys are coming out with a hemp mask. The prototype for that's done.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, we're doing a couple of cool things. We actually just started. We have a brand new hemp fire starter, and that's actually made out of the hemp after it's been extracted. So normally every other processor is throwing that out the door or going to use it in their compost pile. Although we are using it in compost, which is a great use case, we're taking it and then putting it into a fire starting brick. But the accelerant to that fire starter brick is also a hemp byproduct. So it's part of what we're getting through the extraction process that would normally be thrown out. And so it's 100%. Yeah, we're doing hempcrete. So we actually the concept of hempcrete is wonderful, but it's, concrete itself has a formula of sand and rock and other components, right? So that's where the additional structural durability comes from it. So we're working with a couple of different concrete companies, and we came up with a really cool formula for that. And we're also doing a microgreen mat so that you can grow your microgreens on it. And so it's either pre-seeded microgreen mat, and that's made of 100% recycled hemp. And again, this is helping our farmers be able to generate an additional stream of revenue from what they're growing and not just say, hey, what is my CBD worth, right? So yeah, that's a big push for us right now. And the masks, of course, the hemp plastics, it's 3D printing. It's nothing special, and we're utilizing a hemp filament But at the end of the day, we're doing our hemp jars that way and a couple other trinkets. And so the sample jars that we're giving away at different shows and things, we thought it was important to kind of turn that into something more and not have so much waste that was kind of going out the door on it.
Yeah, exactly. That's what the best part about this is. You could still get the cannabinoids, and then you could still have all of the other stuff to make amazing products. We were looking into like hemp rubber and things like that. We have some pretty cool ideas. I don't know if we told you about our idea. I'm pretty open about ideas, but this is one thing I'm not going to say on here because I really think somebody else could probably do it.
If they're not working on it already.
Yeah. I feel like this is something, now that you're into textiles more good enough, this is probably something we might be able to partner up on. So
let's talk after.
Huge.
Yeah, after the air.
Yes. So you're oh, go ahead, Andrew.
I was just gonna say, so you were pretty much born in a family of entrepreneurship. What was your family growing before hemp?
So my grandfather, he was a cattleman. Actually, we had 300 head of cattle that were up on the property. And pre that, the reverendship that happened within the generations, my grandfather, my great grandfather, et cetera, on down the line. So the farms, you know, it's been a move and shake. Use the land for what we can use it for, right? If it's to have cattle on it, if it's to be able to grow a crop. You know, unfortunately, the USDA clamped down on what was going on with beef, and it had to be, you know, butchered and USDA stamped and approved, and so that changed the you know, the industry drastically. And so at that point, honestly, the farm started to degrade, and it became nothing more than you know, a plot of land with a really beautiful colonial old home on it, you know. And putting crops into the fields was a very difficult thing, and my grandfather and my grandmother, and unless there was somebody like me that was going to end up taking it over. But the profitability of lettuce, tomato, basil, it's a very difficult life. And so hemp saved our farm straight across the board. It gives us a crop that has a lot more profitability and creates a legacy more than just creates a moment in time, right? So if I can survive off of basil and lettuce, that's great. But if I can actually fund that farm to be there for the next generation and maybe the generation after that, now it's a legacy. It's a little bit more than, you know. So anyway,
yeah, generational wealth is so huge. Like, I have none right now, you know. Like, I got no generational wealth from my dad except for the wealth of knowledge for agriculture, you know. Like, that's about it. And I don't want that to be for my kids, you know. Like, that's my biggest driving force, is the fact that I took a look at my genealogy and found out that a few generations ago, I think it was 4 generations ago, we had land. We were farmers, you know. We made a living. We were good. And then somebody blew it. And for 4 generations, we've been poor as shit, you know. And somebody has to change that. And I feel like I was kind of brainwashed to be the one, you know. Like, my Nana and I were super close, and she would always be like, "Oh, you're so special. You're gonna change the family." All these things, and I'm like, yeah, okay. And then I eventually, when I got older, I was like, I'm gonna do that. You know, like, when she passed away, I was like, this is it. You know, like, this is what I gotta do. This is what she told me I was gonna do my whole life. So it's time, you know.
Well, you know, the oddity is, truth be told, man, that farm my family's bought that farm now probably 6 times over from banks. You know what I'm trying to say? So the taxes go through the roof, and, you know, it had to sell to when my grandma was getting ready to pass just for her to survive. And so my cousin bought it. You know, and then I bought it from him. It's now sold from the banks, like, you know, 5, 6, 7 times. So, you know, it's that generational, it's more of the legacy of what you did with it, to your point originally, of what's it, you know, the original question, what does it do? What did it do? You know? So, yeah. Yep.
So did you always know that you were going to be an entrepreneur, or was it something that kind of well, for me, I kind of like, I didn't know I was going to be an entrepreneur until I did like 6 or 7 jobs. I'm like, I finally reached a point where I can't do this job, I can't do that one, or this one, or that one. And then I realized, oh, this doesn't matter what job it is, I've got to do something for myself. Did you have like a moment like that? Or did you always know that you were going to follow in your family's footsteps?
Yeah, you know, honestly, I didn't know a lot about him because my dad passed when I was young, and my grandfather passed a month after my father died. So, like, all the males in my family died in literally like 3 months.
Wow.
And so I didn't know a lot of it. It wasn't until I was actually buying the house that an 90-year-old attorney walked into the room, was like, I know your grandfather. He was one of the best businessmen I ever knew. And I never would have heard that, had no idea, none of that. So I think it's being involved with this has taught me more kind of about that history. But going back to your original question, I think we all start out in those younger years as thinking and being programmed that we have to choose a career early on, and that's what we're going to do. And we don't, it's the epiphany that you were talking about having. For me, there was a point in my life where I said, I'm just going to do everything I ever dreamed I wanted to do as a kid, right? Whether it was farming, whether it was the Marine Corps, whether it was authoring technology books, whether it was being the technologist, whether it was being, on a stuntman, and just there's lots of things within the history. But there was a point in my life where I just chose, I am going to do and accomplish all those little things. And quite frankly, that comes from the Marine Corps when, you leave people behind and you realize they're never going to get the chances that they dreamed that they might have. So you kind of owe it to them to do all those things. I don't know. I don't want to get too deep, but yeah, anyway.
Yeah. So thank you for your service, first of all. And, it's an interesting like conundrum you got there, right? Because a lot of veterans are kind of anti-cannabis, right? Because it's kind of brainwashed into you to be anti-cannabis because the military is such,
Absolutely.
So how has that been challenging for you being a cannabis owner, but also a veteran? Are you getting a lot of kickback from like other veterans and whatnot?
Nah, like, I mean, one of the companies that we helped form this season, there's 2 police officers, or 3 police officers that are involved with that. 2 of them are vets. Honestly, man, giving life to this plant kind of changes the game, right? So, for those of us that have had to deal with different aspects, I mean, there's a lot of good and a lot of bad that happen every day. And when you're forced to be shot at, whether it's in the military or whether it's as a first responder, or whether it's because you live in the shittiest possible part of town, all of these people suffer from a different mentality. All of us, I won't classify, I'm a part of that group, right? So you live in this reality of survival of last moment. I couldn't do it in the civilian world. At least in the military, I was able to do it overseas and then come home, and coming home and reassimilating is always very difficult, but I'm not forced to go back out there and deal with it the next day and then come home and try and deal with it and then go back out there and deal the next day. So anybody who lives with bullets flying over their head, and again, whether it's people that live in these neighborhoods or people who are trying to protect them, or people who are first responders in them, we have a lot of those folks that are involved in this cannabis industry, and honestly, it's healing. It's you're giving life instead of watching life be threatened and be taken all the time, right? And that's powerful. This plant, no matter who walks into our greenhouses, and I don't care whether it's every walk of life, their eyes swell and they leave there exhilarated. They leave there exhilarated in a way they never would have expected, and that's the plant. Right. But I mean, when people visit you, it's the same. That's the plant. It's not us. It's what's built around the plant to support that. But it's this plant. It is absolutely this plant. It's either the awe of seeing something that you never thought you'd see in such grandeur, or it's the fact that it was illegal a little bit. You know what I mean? Or you know what I mean? So there's so much around the allure of what this plant is. And then when you actually put your hand to the soil, sowing those oats is powerful. So yeah. Yep.
You may not know it, but you were a huge inspiration and driving force towards a lot of what's going on, because I don't know if I've ever even really told Andrew this. When we saw your facility, it kind of was like confirmation. It was like Andrew and I, we had this idea and we have this idea and we have this plan, and people are like, that's not going to work. And then we see somebody very many steps ahead of us doing exactly what we want to do, and we're like, this can fucking work. This is a real thing. And it's became one of those things where not only have you inspired me and us with that, but it's you've been able to like guide us, like because you're so far ahead of us, I can come to you for advice, and you're always open to be like, yeah, don't fucking do that, man. That's a wrong decision, like, or, like, just keep it real with me, because you became a very, very, very good friend. And I thank you, man. I really do.
No, man, you guys have been a huge motivation for us too. At the end of the day, and you've audited so much of our stuff, and we kind of slapped something together that a lot of people talked about, and it's got its ups and it's got its downs. But if it wasn't for Ellen, if it wasn't for people like you, if it wasn't for all of us coming together, this is year one. We're literally coming round the bases on the very beginning of this last year, and we have to catch up to the West. So quite frankly, in my opinion, it's the brotherhood. It's what always banded the East Coast together in such a strong way. It's not my company, it's ours. And that growth, our success, it's all built off of us being able to pay our bills and feed our families and do that to the people we're employing, and you're bringing employment to your state, to your towns, to your people. There's something powerful in that. There's something responsible and gut wrenching and scary as hell too. But when there's 9 families that live around you and they're there because you built something that's providing them with food. I don't know. That's been a new thing for me. I've gotten people to work for IBM or for CenturyLink or the other companies that I've worked for in the past. And that's always great because you got a buddy a job and whatever, you help advancing their career. But this is different. We all built this together, including you and you guys, So I don't know. It's the best job I've ever had for sure,
Yeah, hell yeah.
So as Adam was saying, like, you were a huge influence for us as you were making the leap to grow hemp and explore the whole business opportunities that hemp has to offer. Who were your influences?
Ellen Brown for sure. I mean,
yes.
Ellen understands all angles. Ellen understands the veteran angle. Ellen, deeply, right? Because she is, but at the same time, because she helps so many people get through it. And I think opioids weren't a problem for me. At the end of the day, I think I realized I could get addicted to a lot of things real quick, especially in the military. And so I try and stay away from those addicting variables, right? So, but I lost a lot of friends to it. I lost a lot of family to it. And so, it became a big push watching my friends just snowball, man. And it's dark enough and hellacious enough. You throw something in there that drags you down with it, and it's a whole nother game. So my big push was on recreational or on medical marijuana originally. And I was also not able to be as open as I should have been able to be because of my IBM, because of all my career, right? Because of the technology background. And that was my bread and butter. And watching Ellen travel the world and speak at every single event, no matter where it was, and the educations that she built and the grassroots work, she was just huge. Jeff Wetzel out here in Connecticut, a lot of the work he did in Connecticut, just huge to me too. There's been a number of people, really have, but Ellen's been that shining light for our whole group for absolutely ever. And so yeah. I think Joe, oh God, I could just, there's a ton. Every person.
I love it. This is what I love about you though, Mike, because you're such a humble dude, man. You really are. You're such a humble guy. And I don't know, this whole brotherhood and this whole like just coming together, the community is so great. Like Ellen Brown, like you said, she literally goes around the world speaking at the most prestigious cannabis events and gets invited to them. Like, Ellen, come, we need you to speak. We need your expertise, because if you've never seen Ellen Brown speak, you're missing out for real. Like, she gives me chills every fucking time she speaks, every single time. I love Ellen. Like, I have such a love for Ellen. She does so much for this industry. And, she literally came to our farm and helped pluck leaves. Like we wet trimmed. She literally is that humble, where she is going around the world speaking and invited to every single prestigious cannabis event. And she's like, yeah, I'll come help on your farm for free. Like, what? She's like, yeah, I love it.
She helped put the roof on our greenhouses, the big greenhouse. She helped put one of those. She helped pull that plastic on one of those whole things.
She's
we're all flying in the air, holding on to it, and she's like, "I got you."
Ellen Brown is definitely my shiro for sure.
Yep. No, and I think I gotta fix this thing. Sorry, guys.
No
there's a lot with her, too. I mean, at the end of the day, that humility is absolutely one imperative factor, but She builds so many educations and she spreads that education. She came down. I hired her to come down and teach like 30 of the people. This is when rec was just hitting legal in Mass. And I hired her to come down and educate all the people in my circle on what cannabis was, what the differences were, what an edible was, how you would extract, like, and she did a baseline, went over all the laws and the legalities. Because I really thought we were going to end up with recreational before hemp, quite frankly. Hemp snuck in there last minute, you know.
Yeah,
so our big focus
Trump was like,
really
here you go.
It was just unbelievable, you know. So I think the transition to hemp was a plan B action. And it's been a blessing, because I'll tell you what, if we made the same mistakes that we made on our hemp as we would on the THC side, we would have gone broke. You know, this is
Oh yeah.
in all the extraction that we've done with all of our big equipment, and you can't feed 100 grams through those machines. You're feeding 2 liters, 3 liters through those machines. And so if you make a mistake, you're gobbling up dollars and cents. And so, yeah, I'm really glad it's been with CBD and with the hemp side as opposed to the THC side, because
it's almost a blessing that it's a little bit less expensive. I didn't even
absolutely
think about it that way.
Yep.
The amount of experimenting Andrew's done with processing and everything, like thinking about it on like a per pound scale compared to what cannabis is, it's like, holy shit.
Just sit down and do the math one night and you'll be like, oh, we got grammar school first. I'm so glad. You know what I mean? And I mean, you know, we're just getting ready to graduate, I think, out of 5th grade, but you know, it's
yeah, we're still in preschool, I feel like.
Yeah. I remember like one of the biggest mistakes that I made is I plugged a really expensive piece of equipment into a power source that was too much for the board to handle. So within a couple of seconds, the whole board completely fried. And I was just thinking, oh no, did I just ruin this whole entire thing? What were some of the mistakes that you made along the way that you really learned from?
He's like, which one?
No, I think the first giant mistake I made, we set up our first short path, and you know, it was the standard short path with the reverb and so forth. And I ran a vacuum pump without any oil in it.
Oh.
And so why my vacuum pressure kept changing and I couldn't stabilize. And I didn't know you needed to put oil. I figured it got shipped to me the way I can, even though the sticker that I pulled off said, make sure you put oil before. I was too excited. I was like the kid. Right. So that very first vacuum pump I brought, actually, and the way that the story goes, and it was kind of funny because my partner now, Jay Soares, always comments about it. Boy, I hope I say this right, because this is all live, right? But I had a guy show up at about 1 a.m. As we were R&Ding. We were going, because it's a 7-hour to 18-hour process, right? And you lose back pressure, and man. So I had a guy show up at about 1 a.m. To rebuild the motor for us in this vacuum pump.
Wow.
And Jay was just like, you just have it? And it just happened to be a really dear friend that I knew was up, and he owed me a favor. And so he jumped to it and hooked us up. And so, yeah, that's probably, it was funny that you asked that, because that one sits within my core.
Yeah, we all have those things. So like you said, you're so excited, and you know what? You don't know what you don't know.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You just never really think about those type of things. It's like, you know, like I kind of thought, you know, when we went into the kiosk, I kind of thought like, okay, we're starting on Black Friday. We're going to crush it. We're going to get fucking thousands of dollars of sales. And then all of a sudden it's like a few hundred, and it's great, but it's not a few thousand. We were like, wow, shit, the traffic's going to be crazy. And it was, but nobody even looked at us, because Black Friday shopping, people are shopping like this. Like they know exactly what they want, how much it's going to cost. They've been looking at it for weeks, and we're just a distraction.
Well, the kiosk move was brilliant. You guys rocked that. You rocked that, right? At the end of the day,
idea.
Yeah. At the end of the day, that was just such a banging choice. And you really, but you know what? You got to have the right kiosk. You got to have the right setup. You have to have the right aesthetics.
Right.
B, you got to have the right people. You got to have the right people that are consistently going to be there, and not just, so it wasn't just about the idea. It was bringing the idea to fruition, and you guys really nailed it straight across the board. Right. And so It was also about the business, and it was also about all of it, all that you guys bring to the plate. So, but yeah. And here's the thing, I think too, brick and mortar is expensive. We don't have
Mm-hmm.
brick and mortar for a store. We're in 47 stores across the country.
Mm-hmm.
But here's my
Mhm.
problem. They all just closed down for the past 4
Yep.
months. Every bit of product that I had on their floor, I lost $70,000 worth of product on the floor.
Yep.
And now I got to figure out how to come up with that again. So, at the end of the day, you guys can pull your inventory off. You have a different control factor. You're not paying for brick and mortar in the same capacity. So
Mm-hmm.
you really found a diamond and shown it, did a really great job at shining it up and making it work. So yeah, it was well done.
It's definitely been rough. Our online sales have increased like sixfold since the shutdown, but
Hmm.
it's still like, we're losing $14,000 a month in sales,
Yeah, man.
at least.
Yeah.
It's been a
Yeah.
couple months now. We're up to like the $40,000 in lost sales so far, and then we double dip. So like you're in 44 stores, we're in 12 so far. All of them are
Hmm.
gone. Like
Yeah.
they're all shut down. They're just starting to open up. Like Good Vibes and Taunton just paid their invoice. We gave them like a net, I don't even know, 90. We're just like, dude, pay us when you can. Like we please, like we don't want you to go out of business because of our
Hmm.
product or something. And he was like, oh, can we get more? So he's like
Hmm.
starting to open back up and whatnot. But it's been rough. It's been a learning
Hmm.
curve, and our hope is that we can get back rolling with the kiosk, because we're definitely still going to be at Natick. We're hoping to be at Dartmouth, and we're still hoping to expand to 2 more locations. But
Hmm.
we're hoping that a lot of our online traffic stays too, so we can be like, this shutdown was like such a blessing. Maybe we can increase our sales fourfold when it's all said and done, when it balances out, and then
Hmm.
still have the kiosks on top of it, and that'll allow more expansion and whatnot.
Yeah.
Here's a really good point. Um, and I think, a lot of people had issues with being able to get their medication. A lot of people had issues with being able to get some of that pain relief and get to doctors. And, you know, if we sit back for half of a second and think, we were able to really help a whole lot of people, and it didn't have an interruption. Like, that's pretty freaking awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's a story that anybody's really talking about out there, but people were able to still access what they wanted to and needed to from a CBD perspective, or even go to the other side of that to get their medicinal side of of the cannabis world.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, you know, it's a pretty great thing that the farmers have been able to keep growing, that we've been able to keep producing, that the CBD has still been able to give a lot of pain relief to a lot of people, emotional relief, etc. And so, I just got to say, go get it from the hemp perspective.
Mm. Oh, Bailey says, look at that man's flow. Hair looks fantastic, Mike.
Well, you know what? If I actually didn't have the hair, it would be down to like here, and I literally look like it. So it was.
It looks like it's at that awkward length where you're like, okay, I could make a decision to keep it, but it's gonna be awkward for like 3 more weeks, and then I'll be good.
Yeah.
I hated that length. I just kind of like wore a hat a lot.
See, when when you start going gray, the minute you shave it, the gray comes out. And
Oh
all of
man.
like this gray streak showed up the last time I shaved my head. So I'm scared of just shaving it straight down because I'm afraid another patch is going to pop up.
Wait,
Now maybe that's
that's not
just
your part
mental.
in the middle?
Oh no, dude, that's a gray streak.
Oh man, I
Yeah.
thought that was your part in the middle.
Oh
That's
wow, so did
that's
I.
gangster. I love that actually.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that.
But it showed up after I shaved my head the last time. So I'm scared to like just go to the buzz. And maybe that's
Uh-huh.
just
Yeah.
mental, or whatever. But yeah, anyway. Yeah. My
Oh,
my
now
wife was like, let's cut it. I'm like,
you got
no.
me scared to cut my hair shorter now, like, what if it grows back? I'm starting to get a lot of white hairs up top. Like, it's kind of like hidden in like the blonde highlight shit, but I'm like looking, I'm like, damn, like that's white, white, white. It's starting to fill in, and
Yep.
I'm like, I'm only 30, man.
Yep.
We're getting to that
Yep.
age. We talked a lot about or a little bit about like learning along the way, and you'd mentioned that you were in the Marines. What did you learn from being in the Marines? Not necessarily entrepreneurial, but just in general.
Adapt and overcome.
Mm,
Right. I mean, this industry, I'm growing hemp. I'm selecting the genetics. I'm creating clones. We're doing seeds. I'm helping farmers to build what they're building, how they're building it, what they're growing, how they're analyzing their soil. We're extracting. We got there right away. We're making human consumables and cosmetics. We're licensed for it, insured to it. We're making textiles and hemp byproducts to have a fully 110% hemp sustainability for an industry. All of that is adapting. I'm having to follow what the market is demanding. Hemp has dropped through the floor in its price. Distillate followed. The next thing to go down are our products. Hemp is coming back up in the market.
Mm-hmm.
Distillate is staying down. There's a tick and a tock, right? Intel calls it a tick and a tock. There's a different shift in motion with every one of these products that we're talking about. So it's about being able to adapt. You know, it's about overcoming the obstacle of when that high and low and that peak and valley is going to be there. And it's also the ability to adapt to my peers, right? My partners, bowing down to their capabilities. They give me the leeway to make the choices that we need to make, and I have to give them the same. And so that's also about that adapting. And you guys know you're doing the same thing, right? We moved into doing hand sanitizer during this point in time. I had the ethanol alcohol because I use it for extraction. I had the aloe vera. I had the other ingredients that we use. People needed it. The governor was calling for it. So we were like, you know what? Let's go.
Let's do it.
Yeah, man. So yeah, it's I think that would really be one of the things that you could take from there.
It seems like one of but it just seems like one of the favorite things about being an entrepreneur that you enjoy is the problem solving. Is
Oh, yeah.
you see a problem and you get enjoyment out of solving it.
Absolutely. That's the engineer though. And I think we're all a little bit that way, right? So the engineer, you're looking at A and B and you're figuring out the fastest way for that to end up happening. And what's the most efficient way? What's the process? And are you right? And you know, it's whether it's research and development and creating a new product and trying to put together the right formula for that product to make it bioavailable and smell right and look right and ship right and bottle right and be the right weight and so forth. It's all engineering, you know, whether it's we're building a new bucker to trim faster or more effective, or you know, a new steam distillation system. Go out into our field. It's the same thing. We're engineering solutions for how we're distributing water or nutrients or the living soil, right? That we're doing, which you know, it's huge. We're not tilling the land. We're actually using the living soil that's there. We're making sure that we're providing all the right microbials and things that need to be there. But we're building and taking our hemp and generating. You know, we brought logs from the forest. We brought it. There's a brand new post that's going to be a video on this, by the way. But you know, brought logs from the woods that were biodegrading, that had fungus all over them, and we took our browns and we took our greens and we mixed them in, and we created an entire living soil compost that we use now in our pots. So the pots that are in our greenhouse, we have 6,000 pots. We have plants that are small growing inside those pots with our hemp plants because they create a root structure. So when you water the plant, normally when your soil dries up, it shrinks a little, right? So you pour water on it and it runs through the sides of that pot. Well, living soil has plants that are growing in it, right? Along with it, clovers and other things. And so those roots allow the water when you pour it in to completely disperse throughout the soil all around it. Those plants are also creating a combative kind of way to the roots of the plant, right? And so the plant's got to fight for its own root a little bit. And eventually that hemp plant's going to be strong enough to push everything out, and you won't have anything growing on the top. But in the beginning, it creates an ecosystem. And so, you know, anyway, so
Are
yeah,
you using things like nematodes and stuff like that in there as well?
Absolutely, yeah. And you want to you want to learn, or you want to get some experience with somebody who's a good soil person. You really want to know what you're looking at when you're looking under a microscope, you know, just like we do with our trichomes and everything else today. You really want to be able to take a look and see if there's disease and see if there's fungus and see if there's issues and be able to tell if they're positive or negative. You know, but that's kind of the beauty of this plant. You can reuse this hemp to bring life back to that soil. It's not like corn. It's not like the other crops that are out there. So it's really important to kind of realize the whole circle of life of this plant is rejuvenating back to the original soil that it grows from. You know, and you guys know this, but for the listener,
yeah, it's great for the listeners because a lot of people just think like there's a lot of misnomers about hemp. You know, like people think that hemp is the male plant. You know, like a lot of people think that. A lot of people think that it doesn't grow buds on it. You know, like things like that.
right?
It's kind
No
of
trichomes. I heard I got, oh, that has too many trichomes. It can't be hemp. I'm like, dude, what? First off, if you know that word, you should definitely know that that's not the case. So
yes,
yeah.
It's somebody told me that you couldn't make hemp look like traditional cannabis, and I was like, you want to bet? You want to like place money on that, or
Yeah. We harvest it early, right? So it's a lot thinner and so forth. But honestly, that's because you know, and there's studies right now on what the right enzymes are to be able to boost the CBD rather than THC, and the importance of those enzymes throughout the week 4, 5, 6, and 7. You know, but we're harvesting early. You know, every single one of the plants that I had within the greenhouse this summer. So this winter, we grew all of the phenome types, and we actually looked at what the smells were, the terpenes, what they produced, how strong they were, how resistant they were to bugs, how resistant they were to cold, how resistant they were to light deprivation, numerous different factors. And we selected those moms hand-picked, and that's what we move forward with. But you know, the reality is that the process in which you go through is just so long, you know, and it's so time consuming. But yeah, you end up with some really good genetics and some really great strains that you can kind of move forward with. So yeah, anyway.
Yeah, I'm excited for the genetics we're getting from you. Whoa.
It's an exciting part. So, as you mentioned before, you're a fully vertical company, and you're involved in everywhere from cultivating to selling the end product. What's your most favorite and least favorite branch of that business tree?
Um, Ah, you know what? Honestly, I enjoyed all, right? So I enjoy the sales side of it because you actually talk to a lot of people that are like, "Oh my God, your product changed my life," and I love that. So it's not sales typically like the other world of sales has always been. It's fun to hear people who come back with that, right? I love manufacturing, and I like making all of the products that we generate. I love, you know, again, it's engineering there. It's improving the process. How can we fill the bottle better? How can we mix this and more improve this? How can we make it more bioavailable? There's always things to learn. Adding the terpenes, which terpenes are important, which, you know, at what temperatures and what places to add these different components together, and the importance of them bonding or co-bonding with each other. I love it all. But you know, the growing of the hemp, planting the seed, you know, the healing that comes with that, the extraction, just removing all those fats and waxes and lipids and the things that normally would not be in a completely pure seed or cannabinoid. You want 98% to 99% cannabinoids. You need to have nothing else in there. So you've got to remove all of that, right? So if your goal is to have it, then your goal is to have it. But in general, if you're trying to get to that purest level, it's got to be removed. That it's just amazing to me. All of it's amazing as we extend through. You know, I think I think I wish I wish sales were. I love what we create, and I love, but getting to market without having Google AdWords, without having, there's so many walls within that. It's very frustrating. It breaks my heart, and I feel like we're being, you know, we're being stepped on, you know, and I don't feel like we have a right to have an open and free industry. And so I hate that part. If I was to hate anything, it's that I hate I can't use the standard tools that everybody else gets to use, you know?
It's frustrating.
It really is. It's like it's just there's no reason for it, and it's even more frustrating when the out of staters are not regulated how we are. You know, like
Yeah.
as a licensed entity in your state, you're regulated way heavier than the people
Hmm.
who our competition is in your state. You know, the 7 Cents company, they're from Canada. They don't have to follow any regulations. Like
Right.
Massachusetts, you're not allowed to sell CBD gummies, but I mean, CBD, edible, anything. They openly sell gummies and literally everything, you know.
Yeah.
And they can't get in trouble, and they won't get in trouble for it. But we're 150 feet down the hall, and we're not allowed to do that.
Well,
It's
and
so
it's people are creating crap ass products, and
Mhm.
it's flooding the market, right? You can't track the lot. You can't track the seed lot that hemp was grown from, that's extracted, that's now within your product. And so, you know, there's so many, you know, the farmers like, all right, the farmer that I have, that's a dear friend, he sent his product out to Tennessee instead of having us extract it, because his broker wanted him to go that way. The broker went bankrupt. His entire harvest was now stuck in Tennessee. It got shipped to Colorado. Any contracts that he had with that broker, they're belly up because they went bankrupt. So now the guy in Colorado possesses his product. He's like, well, I spent 10 grand to dry it. Right now on the market, it's only worth $3 a pound. So I can either destroy it for you, or I can keep it, but you're still gonna have to pay me 10 grand for the price that it costs to dry it. And so this guy completely gets robbed. And so, you know, we got an industry again with that federal statement in the very beginning, like we need some type of regulation. We need it very definitively, and we need we need a value for this crop to be determined, so that there isn't such a drastic high and low for our farmers, especially, you know, in a lot of the distillate groups that I'm involved in. I see these people openly selling their distillate right now for 200 to 250 for a liter of crude. And that's in
Wow.
large scale buy, but that's ludicrous. That means I paid the farmer $5 a pound.
Yeah.
I starved that person. They should have grown hay. And, you know,
Yeah.
these people are proud of that. And it breaks my heart. And so, yeah, these are the areas that are kind of the factors that we need to change. We just need to change.
Yep.
Too many people are going to get hurt.
And that's again where genetics come in, like you're saying, because if you are going to only get $5 a pound, you got to make sure that you're getting the best, you know, yields possible in your plants. You have to be able to get 3-4 pounds, 4 pounds ideally average off of a plant to be able to make 20,000 an acre, you know, if you're doing it that way.
And yeah,
Unfortunately, I
that's
think, oh, go ahead.
no, and that's the point of like selecting genetics, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
actually testing them, because I can give you seeds, but at the end of the day, if we don't know how it is from a mold resistance perspective, how it is from a light resist or light deprivation perspective, overcast days for a half of a month or an entire month, because that's what God wants, you know, that's what Mother Nature has happening, right?
Yep.
And we need to know that yield is still going to be good. It's still going to be strong. It's not going to go blue and fade away.
Yep.
And so it is really about selecting those genetics appropriately, but that selection is a very different type of a selection too. I think you know, that selection is got to be done. You know, you could live the next town over, but your altitude is completely different than where I'm at. So you know, it's not just a state perspective. Everybody's looking at it from the state perspective. It's very specifically to a number of different things: the biometric pressures, the changes because of what altitude you're at, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so the more data we have, the more it's going to answer the question of what's best to grow on my field under these exact circumstances. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Having a recipe, sorry.
Especially in your neck of the woods, there's a lot of elevation changes up and down. It's a mountainous region, lots of hills around and everything too. So out in Western Mass and Connecticut, it's like that. Like literally
Yeah,
town to town, it's different growing conditions, like you're saying.
it
And
is.
I remember 3 years ago now, right? Yeah, 3 years ago now. I was guerrilla growing, like most of us start doing.
I
And
have no idea what you mean.
and you know, everything went great. It got towards the end of the season when it was hurricane season, and we just so happened to have a really rainy season. And so rainy, in fact, that it was 5 days in a row of not really rain. It was just misting and 50 degrees and 100% humidity and just dense air. And what happens to your entire crop when that happens?
Molds
Mold.
right up.
Goodbye. My entire
Yep.
most of my 95% of my crop was gone. You know, like
Yeah, man.
just
That was the
absolutely
wettest season I think we had in history. I think,
Yes.
or you know, in however many 100 years or whatever the, you know, but yeah, it was an extraordinarily wet season.
that makes me feel better because like that scarred me forever. Like there's PTSD from that, definitely. Like last year when we were getting close to harvest season, I saw like 3 rain days coming. Like I was like, Andrew, no, we gotta go. You know, like just freaking out, like just because of that in the back of my mind. Like I lost my whole crop. We can't lose our crop.
Dude,
It was
I was hydro lettuce and basil at that time. And
oh,
that humidity, that moisture, if there's nothing to get it out of the greenhouse and it just builds, there's nothing you can do. You can still blow air, but the air you're pulling in is just as moist as the air that's blowing out. And you can't throw a heater in there because that's the only other way to dehumidify. So that was I'm sorry, reverse that. But yeah, I just there was too many issues to kind of overcome within that season. We had a terrible season in the greenhouse that year. Yep.
well, that's good to hear.
Yeah, you weren't the only one.
Yes.
So what excites you most about the future of hemp?
All the innovations. I mean, we're seeing it starting to be used in a lot of different textiles. I think I've seen at least 10 different companies that are using it, whether it's in products that you use for your deck or building house materials or 3D printing capabilities. I think there's a number of different uses that we're starting to see it really kind of unfold in a very different dynamic, other than just the clothing or paper line, which, by the way, are wonderful lines. But, this is the melting pot, man. We're the most creative people in the world, and we're just opening up a brand new industry. I'm really excited to see what's going to be coming.
Especially you reminded me and got me re-excited to talk to you about the idea after this. I was like, ooh, yes, innovation.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I think
Innovation
there's
is
going to
the
be.
only way. It's the only way
It
to
is.
keep a business alive.
It is adapting and overcoming. Absolutely.
That's my favorite part of entrepreneurship is figuring out your mistakes, because you're gonna make them, and if you don't make them, you're probably gonna fail in the long term, because getting those little mistakes out now are so important towards the growth and scale of our business. And uh, just having those stressors happen especially in a partnership, and surviving that, and not only surviving it but thriving through it, it's just like it's very building, team building. And then like you were saying, having our employees is like, oh, having 8 people, we can be like, what do you guys think about this, that are
Yeah.
directly involved with it. And a big part of the shutdown, we went to them and we were just like, hey, you guys should really focus on branding yourself during the shutdown. Like, work hard on that, like brand yourself through us, use our name. Like, we have a little bit more of a push, use us, whatever. We love you guys. We hired you for a reason. Start branding yourselves. And pretty much all of them started doing that. Isaac, our production assistant that you were talking to before the show, he's one of our mall employees too. So it's like we're helping them kind of find their niches too, which is a really cool thing as an employer. And I think that's something that makes us avoid mistakes too, just being able to have employees that aren't really like, they're employees, but they're not really. They're like 8 partners, like I fully believe that all of our employees will leave us, not because of us, because we suck, but because they moved on to something that they really loved, and were really passionate about, like on their own. So, I don't know
Yeah,
where I
well,
was going with that.
that's part of the entrepreneur. No, that's part of the entrepreneurial portion of this whole thing. And that's something people don't get. If I'm going to take you into my corporation, I would have started you off as an engineer, and the engineer would have become a senior engineer, and the senior engineer would have become an architect, and the architect would have become a senior architect and chief architect. And there's a very specific way I would have helped you to get through your career path, right? For us, our career path are helping people form an amazing company in a brand new industry that exhilarates them and gets them motivated and lets them. We had a guy who was interning for us, very smart guy, and I won't define where he works because that would probably tell too much of his detail, but very intelligent and definitely aligned in our industry. And he came in, and we were building our fire starters. And so he was working with us on the formula. And the next day, after he had worked with us for the whole day, he kind of came back and he showed us pictures of his deck, and he just redone his whole deck, and he was all proud of his deck, and it looked really nice, and he had done this whole lattice and put things up, and it looked really great. And he's like, yeah, I never did any kind of work like this before, but I had never done what we had done. I never sat down and say, hey, let's try and mix these compounds and see what we can't make out of these two things, and let's just have an R&D experience. And he went home and he rebuilt his whole deck because he just thought, well, what the hell? I'm going to take a swing. Like, what's the worst case scenario? You know what I mean? And so to me, it was just a huge personal motivation where it was just like, holy shit, you know, the way you can kind of impact people without even meaning to have an impact to those individuals, you know, and we all see ourselves to the light that we see ourselves, and we don't really know if that person hasn't had that opportunity, you know, or you know, we all have our own isms, you know. So it was cool. Just him being involved with the team building this generated something that paid straight back the next day. Quite literally, it was pretty neat, man. But that's the entrepreneurship.
That's one of the things I really miss about going to all these cannabis events and everything, because like you said, from an inside perspective, it's hard to really know where you're at sometimes. And, you know, with Andrew and I, it's kind of insular, you know, like and then when we go out, people are like, just, I don't know, lately when we would go to events, it was just like so humbling. Like everybody's trying to talk to us, and like, I don't know. It's mind blowing to me that like people are so welcoming in this industry, that they're just like, oh, we see people doing the right thing. Hey, what's up, guys? You know, like that's all it takes in this industry, is like you don't have to be anything special. You just have to like do the right things by people, and people notice. And then
take a heartbeat on that. Like, think about that. Like, people, can you walk up? Can a small store owner walk up to the CEO of Target and be like, hey, man, would you give me a little advice? Like, people see you succeeding, and they can actually approach you. That's an amazing time in this vertical, in this industry right now. You know what I mean? Exactly your point. It's very powerful. So sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
no,
it's
same with how we met you. You know, like we wouldn't have met you without a cannabis event. What did we meet at the Springfield event, right? CannaCon?
That's right. Yeah.
We were on a panel together, Andrew, you, and myself, and Brian Quinn was on there too. And so there was just synergies, you know, things are meant to happen, and we really connected after that.
Led by Ellen Brown.
That's
exactly.
Right.
All full circle to freaking Ellen Brown. Shout out to her. She really was the one that reached out, like, oh, I'm moderating this thing, guys, you want to join? And I'm like, hey, I have a partner in this too, and he's way smarter than me, so let him be on too. And she's like, okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, it was a pleasure having. Yeah, that was an amazing time too, because the knowledge around genetics, the knowledge around extraction, the knowledge that was a very, very collaborative day where we were just like, oh my god, yeah, we get you, you get me, oh my goodness, yeah.
John Dvorak planted the seed in my head of wild grown hemp in Connecticut, ditchweed, and I haven't been able to get it out of my head. Like, I want to go hunting for it every day that I breathe, like literally.
yeah absolutely.
I just did a big section of the Appalachian Trail, and every single day that I was out there, I was scanning the trail for ditchweed. Didn't find any, but I saw some that were similar. They looked pretty close, at least when they were very young.
Do one of you guys want to explain it for 100th of a second to the listeners of what we're talking about there?
Ditchweed.
Yeah, finding the gold mine. Yeah, go ahead. Anyone?
I mean, from my understanding of it, it's hemp that used to be grown from the settlers, and then it spread out. I don't know if on its own or if somebody purposefully spread it out. In the Connecticut Valley, my history isn't. No,
you're going. Keep going. You got it. Come on, you got it.
And then eventually there were forces that said, "Hey, we need to wipe all of this out," and they missed a chunk, and that chunk still exists, pretty much genetically untapped, and that's out there right now. And so that's what Adam and I, and that's what we're mentioning now. Did I do a pretty good job at it?
Man, that was beautiful. I would not have said it so well. So,
and then what we can do, the reason this is so exciting for us is because we could take those original genetics, breed them with our already strong genetics, but they're like, 5, 6, 7 generations down the line, and we're reintroducing the original genetics, which is going to make it stronger. So then you
And
find phenotypes of the good original strains, you find phenotypes of what we have, cross them together, and have a fucking ultimate strain.
And because it's existed in the wild through all of the winters and all of the different seasons, it has become so strong in
Yep.
its own genetic. So yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Develop terpenes that bugs don't like, just to be able to survive throughout the seasons. And oh my god, it's just it's always in the back of my mind, no matter what. If you ever see me in person, I'm thinking about it. Trust me.
It's the holy grail, folks. It's the
It
holy
really
grail.
is. John Dvorak fucked up my whole life bringing that up to me. We're gonna find it someday. Like, we're gonna. I'm determined. I know Andy is too, especially after hearing that. That's really why I love you, man. Because that's fucking awesome. Does it have a name for this area? So I have looked. I've Googled, wild grown hemp in Connecticut, and there was one park that people said that they found it, but it was like 15 years ago, and they're not sure if it's there anymore. It's been a long time. I'll have to figure out what park that is again, because I really want to hone in on that area. And then I don't really have any other leads besides that. It's
Well, that's the whole point. As people get a chance to walk the woods, finding it. It's the treasure hunt, right?
Yep.
It's literally, and enjoy it as a treasure hunt, because it's about the hunt and the path that you're taking, not necessarily the treasure at the end. To your point, you guys were both paying attention to nature as you're walking through nature, just a little bit differently. And that in itself is actually finding the equivalent, right? I mean, well, all right, not yeah, but it is.
because it's hidden in plain sight, literally. Like,
Yeah.
because there's just so much green and so much lush. Like, how the fuck do you find these little plants just going straight up? It's hard. It's difficult. It's gonna be, when we find it, it's gonna be like, and then just hoping that we have the right equipment to be able to take it. Like either it's in the right season where there's pollen, or where we have something on us, like a napkin that we could wet and keep the cutting in, something. Note
And it
to
could be
self,
in a
Andy.
barn, right? It could be in a barn, a 200-year-old barn that somebody had, that the seeds were actually sitting on the top of some post that fell down because the barn just collapsed for the very first time, or it could be at any point, right? And so that's kind of as the earth reclaims these different structures and nature, starts to bring them back, all of these small treasures that somebody would have stashed in a different place, the tins that they might have been kept in back then, they rust out, and then suddenly. So yeah, it could be anywhere, right? In the theory of the whole story.
The tough thing is just making sure it's not just a guerrilla grow. Like that's what a lot of people said. Like, oh, I found weed in the forest all the time, but it's not wild grown. It's somebody went there and planted weed.
It's somebody else's.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess we're not advocating for someone to run out, and if they stumble across somebody else's harvest, to touch it and then get hurt because they did. So right, let's make sure we clarify. Yeah.
Make sure it's actually like looks like, not, you could tell a guerrilla grow, it's cleared out. There's usually like some sort of system.
It's manicured.
Yes, very much. So look for wild, and if you ever find it, I know there's, Andy, you have a lot of hiking friends too. You got to get them on this mission. Be like, dude, we will fucking pay you $1,000 if you find this. Like,
actually, I don't have many hiking friends. All the friends that I have that hike, we're a very small niche group that kind of really go out there. Yeah. So it's I think this job is on us.
Did you bring that up to Shay while you were hiking?
No, I didn't. I just kept my eyes peeled. He's not really. He's more of a. His mind is more geared towards other things, where I'm where I'm looking at like, oh, I've seen that flower before, or those leaf patterns in the beginning of Connecticut, but up here 50 miles later, these leaves, they're so much more mature than this plant, and I'm like, oh, this is a new one. I haven't seen this one in 4 days. So like my mind works that way, where his like, I have no idea. What did you say? Have we just seen that plant or not?
Looking at it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Oh man, that just got me more excited because we're planning a little hike.
It's around.
It's got to be in Western Mass too. Like, it's got to be like basically everywhere that
It's
there's
anywhere.
forest.
Yeah, it's not just a Connecticut thing. It's definitely not. It's the forest.
Behind the golf course, Andy.
Who knows? It could be there.
Jesus.
Hey, so I say we build an app that you can actually do the geocaching. If you if you search an area and you found something you think or something, we should build an app that does that, so everybody can do kind of a geocache.
But could you also imagine? You remember how we said you said we have to catch up to the West Coast? Don't you think
Oh.
if we found those genetics, don't you think the West Coast would have to catch up with us then?
That's it, man. That's it.
So it's something we'd have to figure out how to have like a geocache that's very exclusive, you know, like to
There you
the
go.
East Coast hemp growers and shit. No
You got
offense.
to be part of the crew.
But if you're out if you're out in Indiana, I did some research. It actually said that was the highest populated area of ditchweed, of wild hemp. And the DEA literally eliminated millions of documented plants. Like it's documented on DEA. Like we eliminated 4 million hemp plants, you know. And like Mike said, it has to be out there. Seeds go dormant. Structures rust, tins rust. I mean, structures fall down, tins rust. So you never know what's gonna happen, and that just got me so much more excited for it. Can we go right now? Can we?
And we're also not advocating that you go walking around dilapidated barns either. So don't put yourself at risk.
Oh, I definitely will. That's awesome, man. This has been such an amazing show. I'm so happy. We had to delay it a couple weeks ago because of car
Sorry
troubles,
about that.
and then last week it was just a scheduling error, and then this week I wasn't feeling good. Like literally, like 3 hours ago, I was like, oh, I don't know how I'm gonna do this show, man. And then I don't know, just found my second wind. I think it might have been the cannabis, honestly,
and good company.
And good company.
Yeah,
That'll always do it too. That'll always do it.
That's it.
Not that my wife isn't good company. It's been a rough day health wise. My stomach has been just flipping. I don't know why. Just randomly, I just get like IBS flare ups and stuff, and it's just like, oh, it sucks so bad. And bad news on top of that, you know, that's always fun to deal with. I'm like texting Andy like I'm woosahing myself.
Yeah, you said that. I'm like, I don't even know what that means. It's just a funny word to me.
It's like woosah. Like just like relax.
I thought you meant like
that's a Seinfeld thing. That's an old Seinfeld thing.
I thought you meant like woozy.
Oh, you guys sent him to the Seinfeld episode.
I was woozy too, so that I was woozy too. So maybe I guess I could see what you're talking about because I was like, I'm having stomach problems and I'm woosang. That's fucking awesome.
But yeah, you know, Mike, sometimes we ask entrepreneurs to give a little bit of advice to someone who maybe hasn't quite taken the entrepreneurial leap yet. What might you say to someone who's thinking about starting a venture of their own?
So, you know, the real honest advice was make sure you have a run rate that you can survive on for at least a full year. So whatever your costs are going to be, have a run rate so that you can survive any highs or lows that you might run into. Don't try and live off the dime. I think, you know, forecasts are just that. They're a forecast. You know, think of that forecast as being something like the weather. It's gonna change. It's gonna completely change. And if you can adapt, you can change with it. But what you plan today, it's gonna grow and evolve into its own thing. It's not gonna be what you imagined. It will be something much better oftentimes, and again, to the point that was made earlier, mistakes are an amazing thing and you learn from them, so they're a huge plus to have. So yeah, you might have failures along the way, but it's going to evolve into its own thing. You're giving birth and planting a seed. You can't grow for it, so don't resist the change. Let it become what it's going to become, and stay alert, stay alive.
Love it.
Beautifully said.
Absolutely. Ooh, somebody said go to Bash Bish Falls, Western Mass. Hold on, I need to take a picture of that. I'm obsessed.
What's a Bash Bish Falls? Oh no, Bash Bish Falls for the sea. Shh, never mind. Don't share that.
Yes. Delete your comment now. I'm just kidding. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, Mike. We're definitely going to keep talking after this. I'm really excited for that too. So, if you're listening or watching, please subscribe wherever you're listening or watching, and share with your friends too, to help a couple small businesses get their stories out there, and maybe help other entrepreneurs get started and maybe keep going. You never know who's struggling out there. So yeah,